Good morning, friends. This is Genius Support Coach and Mentor signing on our Facebook Live. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And I apologize for coming in a bit late, but it's so lovely to get in touch with you all back again on another week, another Monday, and another day to look forward to believing that, your desires are true. Your desires are there to be achieved, and your desires can be achieved. How fascinating is that? When you know you live every moment and every day, not with deferring your desires. Because when you defer your desires, you have desires, but you're like, you know what, I don't think I can make it. I wish I had changed my job, or I wish I have a higher paying salary. Or not even that. It's just that I wish I could be somebody more, do something more. And I have put away those desires for so long that I don't believe them any longer. So if your Monday starts with something like this, don't worry, you're not alone. A lot of us have lived through that. A lot of us sometimes have to remind ourselves that that's not true. So if you're going through that, you're not alone, but you don't have to live through that. You don't have to be that. You don't have to let that be your reality, because your reality is your thinking from the past that's come into the present, and you can change your present thinking so your future, your next day, your next moment, your next evening is different. I had a very funny example I had a few years ago. I had a close colleague, and a close colleague was ranting about how his previous boss, he didn't get along with his previous boss. He's recently met her, and how yada yada yada. And I kept reminding him. I said, "Don't think of what didn't work. Think of how things worked. You moved on. You're in a different role. That previous boss didn't stop you." And he kind of wasn't getting the hang of it. So I said, you know what, go home. Before you go home, just think of what you like to eat, right? Think about what you like to eat. He's a guy, uh, mom still made everything, so you know what is, he's like, I like the way she makes lasagna. I like the way she makes lasagna, and I love it with the cheese, yada yada. And so that was like a 1 minute conversation, and then we left it at that. He came back the next day and he said, you won't believe what was there for dinner. And it was a lasagna, right? So that was the way he liked it. And that was my example of like, change your way of thinking now so that your next future is a little better. And we're all circling around the word actually motivate. Now, motivate is when you stimulate interest or enthusiasm in doing something. Now, to go to the example of my colleague, right? Uh, that worked very well, because you know what, there was not so much resistance around his desire. There were the desire was there, and he went home and it was manifested. Like, it was easy to put into place. The universe often finds it easy to give us our desires if there's not too much resistance. If there was resistance, like, oh, I like this, but for example, my mom hasn't made it in a long time, or she's not around, or this or that or that, the universe will say, very well, okay, if you think it's difficult to have, okay, we'll make it difficult for you to have, right? So but the key thing was to let the desire bubble up, and to let the desire manifest, right? And often to let the desire manifest, and sometimes to do activities to let the desire manifest, is the motivation to motivate yourself. The motivation can be of two types. One is when you have to push yourself to get up in the morning and go and do this. It's like pushing a noodle. You try pushing a noodle, you know how hard it is, right? Just that example. It's like pushing a noodle. A lot of what I speak comes from my mentors. So if it sounds familiar, you and me are on the right track because we're listening to the same mentors. But motivation is two types. One is if you have no energy to do something and you're kind of pushing yourself, okay, let me go. If I don't go, I'll get late, I'll get the later train, but you're not happy with the outcome. You're not happy. That outcome doesn't pull you, right? One is motivation, is when it's like that. It's not the best thing, and you can see my expression. The other motivation is, hi, Kate, good morning. How are you? All the way from Africa, honey. It's so nice to see you. The other kind of motivation is when you're inspired from within to reach out. Nothing can stop you. It's like that desire bubbles inside of you. It feels good. You think about it and you do some actions in place and you let it go. You don't have a whole lot of yes, but, yes, but, yes, but enough. Lifelong of why it won't happen, right? The desire is fresh, the desire is good. You think of the steps fall into place, you take the next step and the next step and the next step, and before you know it, the cake was done. The cake is baked, the job is changed, the manager's spoken to, you've got your grocery list. You're like, whatever was it? It can be anything, right? It can be throwing a party, it can be sitting with your kids to study. If there is a whole lot of resistance, a whole lot of reasoning, that's resistance, you're not going to get things done. But, or rather, it'll be much, much harder. It's like flogging a horse, right? And taking it to the well to the drink. But if you're inspired from within, and that's motivation from in within, it's because you're naturally wired this way. That idea attracts you. That idea seems possible. You love the new energy in the new idea. Some new friends spoke to you about something new. You thought of a new way of doing something. You know, when you have the newness to it, when there's nice energy to it. And sometimes there's a nice energy to something because you've had a very successful outcome in the past. So that energy, that reminder, that memory actually adds to the momentum of the new memories you're creating, right? Have you ever had one successful event and another successful event, and before you know it, your events are a success because you know how it's done, you know how it's mastered, you know to put the things in place, you know what to say, you know when to say it, you know how to guide your emotions when the doubts come up, you know how to have the reasoning, you know the people to keep in touch, you know whom to tell and what to do, right? So you know how to delegate. Once you have all that in place, your next event and your next event and next event is smooth. Why? Because the momentum and the energy from the previous activities now makes it easier for you to dream of the next one and the next one and the next one. You know how it's done, right? And the first time, have you did you realize when you held an event, you were so bothered with how it's going to come through, who to call, how to call, the emotions and everything. Now, when you hold an event, you have all that down pat. You have the ingredients in place, the items in place. You've got the games in place. You've got uh, you know, the forthcoming food and snacks in place, you've got the conversation in place, everything, right? So you have it down pat because now you're on the roll with the momentum, my friends. So motivation often will be of two types, like I said. One is like pushing a noodle when you have to flog yourself to do something because it's on your agenda. And one is when it's inspired from inside. You want to make sure your motivation is inspired from inside. John Maxwell has a favorite saying, though, that sometimes shed light on when you have to flog yourself to do something. You really don't have to flog yourself to do something. Often, if it's health related, for example, like I've given this example before and I love giving it again. If I'm not watchful and I let a lot of gap go between my meals, I will reach out to the first thing, right? Which sometimes is not the healthiest and it tells on my body. But if I am watchful and I make sure I time my meals and my snacks, I really enjoy what I eat. I eat healthy, and of course, it doesn't have negative effects on my body. So there you go, all three effects, right? So sometimes it is just do it, and John Maxwell is of the opinion, just do it, right? If you know it works well for you, put that into place, put that in your agenda, and do it. Because when you do it right, you get the right momentum to do the right things. The energy automatically comes into place. Classic case, if I don't plan my meals, not only am I not happy about what I'm intaking, but it doesn't give me good results. But now that I've figured out how to make it work, I put it on my agenda and I make sure I follow it. First of all, I'm happy with what I intake. Second thing is it's healthy. And the third thing, it agrees with me, right? So two things. So once I'm aware of how it works, then I'm inspired. My inspiration to do it goes longer and longer. And I go more days with a more healthier meal plan in place rather than just an ad hoc, right? So sometimes you figure out what's good for you. You figure out morning waking up at 4 o'clock works well for you. You figured sleeping in the night works well for you. You figured morning 6 to 8 or 4 to 8 works well. Whatever works well for you. Put that on your agenda, because the momentum from those activities will actually inspire you from within. So, my friends, that was motivate for you. Two kinds of motivation. Make sure when you're doing your activity, you recognize what the motivation is, what the motivation stems from, what's the reason for the motivation, and what activities you can put in place. You will have a very, very successful life, a very successful day, and very successful hours. It always starts with a little few minutes, and bubbles up into the day and the month and the year. So if you want a great year, great month, great day, and a great few hours, start with what you're doing right now. Make sure you're motivated rightly and have the success roll in. This is Jean, your support coach and mentor, signing on a Monday. And I look forward to connecting with you tomorrow on another wonderful day. If you like a word, share it with me. I'd love to mull over it and share some thoughts back with you. Or we can connect and see if you're on the same page. Bye for now. Craig, how are you? Good to see you.